2026 meeting of the Mobile City Planning Commission. I would like to take a moment to review our general operating procedures. Our meeting is divided into two sessions, the public hearing session and the deliberation session. In the public hearing session, an application or group application on the agenda is called. The applicant makes his or her presentation. Commission members ask questions, if any. Members of the public may make their comments. Only 4 people may speak for an agenda item or project and 4 against. Each speaker is limited to 5 minutes, subject to questions by the commission. After 4 minutes, a loud beep will indicate 1 minute left to speak, and at this point, please summarize your comments. After all opposition speakers have finished, the applicant will be given time to respond. If you do intend to speak, please come to the podium, speak into the microphone, and give your name and address for our minutes. Please direct all comments to the commission only and not to the applicant or the audience. And please remember to speak directly into the microphone. On routine applications, the applicant may simply raise his or her hand if there are no objections to staff recommendations. I will then announce that the applicant is in full agreement with those recommendations. If there are any questions, the applicant will be given an opportunity to respond. After hearing all applications, the commission will go into deliberation session. In the deliberation session, the commissioners discuss each application with input from the staff as necessary, but with no input from the audience. The commissioners then vote on each application, and results of the voting can be learned from the planning department. If some issue arises in the deliberation session that were not addressed in the public hearing, the chairman has the discretion either to allow additional comments pertaining to those issues in order to resolve them, or call for the application to be held over for discussion at a future meeting. Occasionally, 1 or more commission members may recuse themselves from discussing and voting on a given application. A recusal does not necessarily mean the member is directly involved with the application or the applicant. Depending upon the circumstances, ethical rules may require a recusal when there is only the slightest appearance of a conflict of interest. If a regular member recuses, a supernumerary will vote in their stead unless both supernumeraries are already voting due to absences. The Planning Commission makes final decisions subject to appeal on subdivisions, planning approvals, and plan unit developments, PUDs. The Planning Commission only makes recommendations on zoning applications, with the City Council making the final decision. Please turn off all cell phones at this time. Commissioners and staff, please remember to turn on your microphones when speaking. Roll call. Carlos Gant, Chairman here. Ms. Libby Latham. Here. Mr. John Vallis.
Here.
Mr. Thomas Doyle.
Here.
Mr. Taylor Atchison.
Here.
Ms. Keena Andrews.
Here.
Mr. Nick Omberger.
Here.
Ms. Bess Rich.
Here.
Mr. Don Hembry.
Here.
Mr. Alan Cameron. Ms. Shirley Sessions.
Here.
We have a quorum. First item up, we would like to ask Ms. Keena Andrews and Mr. Thomas Doyle to please approach the podium, as well as ask the mayor to come forward.
That explains that. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
How's everybody doing?
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present these certificates of appreciation. This will be the last meeting for Keena Andrews and Thomas Doyle, and we have a certificate of appreciation, both of which read the same, and so I won't read both of them, since it says the same thing, because it's very simple. And even though it's simple words, it is with a tremendous amount of gratitude that not only I, but the city appreciates what you've done. And the certificate reads, Ms. Keena Andrews and Thomas Doyle are hereby officially thanked and recognized for honorable public service to all Mobilians while on the Mobile Planning Commission, done on the 29th day of August in the year of our Lord 2018 and in the 316th year of the founding of the City of Mobile, proclaimed by William S. Stimson, 108th Mayor of the City of Mobile. Thank y'all so much for your service.
speech.
Thank you. I'd also like to take agenda items out of order. Would like to have the public hearing on the planning jurisdiction first, and deliberations if necessary. So would staff please come forth to open that session?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a few brief comments regarding the agenda item that's before you today regarding the administration's request for the rollback of the 5-mile planning jurisdiction. As recommended in the Map for Mobile Comprehensive Plan, the city is focusing its limited resources in a way that provides high-quality services and infrastructure within the existing built environment. As the city of Mobile strives to provide better services for its citizens, a rollback of the planning jurisdiction affords the city with the ability to enhance essential services involving the planning and development review process. As previously indicated, roughly 35% of subdivision applications currently reviewed by city staff are generated from the jurisdiction alone. This significant caseload reduction will reduce the turnaround time impacting development cases within the city limits. Additionally, while the Mobile City Planning Commission may require a higher standard of infrastructure construction within the jurisdiction, the effectiveness of these standards are limited as the county does not enforce compliance with this higher standard, nor does the city have the ability to inspect any requirements that this commission may stipulate. In an effort to address concerns expressed by county officials, city staff most recently met with representatives from the county to discuss the request that is before you today. Items specifically addressed included the county's subdivision regulations, which were adopted in 2005 in their current application outside of the current 5-mile jurisdictional boundaries, the county's current administrative review and appeals process for subdivision applications occurring outside of the PJ, the lack of city enforcement powers within the jurisdiction specifically as it relates to stormwater requirements, enforcement of the county's stormwater management program that was adopted in December of 2017, application of the city's major street plan as well as the MPO's long-range transportation plan, which both jurisdictions currently adhere to, as well as a number of available ordinances, including the city's current regulations, which would serve as a template to further expedite the county's timeline to enact new policies and procedures. Staff is hopeful that we were able to provide sufficient responses to county concerns regarding the potential rollback. Additionally, planning staff expressed its commitment to supporting county staff during a possible transitional period. To satisfy state law requirements, the administration respectively asks that this commission consider this matter today upon feedback from today's public hearing. We are happy to answer any questions now or following the close of the public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions by commissioners? Is there anyone here to speak for this?
I don't know that I'm here to speak for or against, but the County Commission asked me to come and make our position known to the Planning Commission. My name is Matthew Barclift, and I'm the Engineering Manager for Development. And so a lot of the responsibility is going to fall in my office. 35% of the applications are going to fall in my office. We know the challenges that come with staffing up for these kind of things, and 3 months' notice is a tremendous burden to try to staff up and prepare. But I wanted to go ahead and speak with you as a commission about some of the things that I worry about being impacted by the rollback of the Planning Commission's jurisdiction. The County Commission did adopt subdivision regulations in 2004 that went into effect, or in 2005, and they are a very basic set of subdivision regulations. There are many things that are not addressed in those due to the rural nature of where they apply. In the significantly growing areas outside of the city limits, particularly in the planning jurisdiction, there are issues that the City of Mobile's subdivision regulations address that the counties currently do not. Among those are access management. The Planning Commission, as a Planning Commission, you dictate the number of accesses. We don't have that ability in our subdivision regulations. Connectivity. There are some very nice developments out there with connectivity between 2 or 3 subdivisions due to the ability of the Planning Commission to require master planning. We don't have master planning in our subdivision regulations right now. The City of Mobile's stormwater ordinance. While the county does not review and enforce it, what we do enforce is that they give you a certification that it meets the city's stormwater ordinance. We do not currently have a stormwater ordinance, and so there would be a significant backtracking in the stormwater requirements inside the planning jurisdiction. Buffering. In so much as the city has zoning, the buffering is easily defined, and the Planning Commission always has that on the plats regarding commercial. The county is going to have to be more careful in how we define the buffering, as we do not have zoning to differentiate between residential and commercial. But buffering is a very necessary protection for residential properties that end up with a commercial development next to them. The major street plan, as adopted by the Planning Commission, as a tool of the Planning Commission that is used by the county and by the Regional Planning Commission. Historically, when the Planning Commission has rolled back their planning jurisdiction, such as in the Sims area, they have abandoned those portions of the major street plan. And so in order to prepare for these major corridors that will eventually be coming on our long-range transportation plan, Destination 2040, the county needs to be able to put something in place before the City Planning Commission rolls theirs back. And finally, we've not been able to fully evaluate the changes, but cul-de-sacs and other subdivision design requirements that with regard to the fire code, the county may need to adopt some sections of the fire code to make sure, for example, that we get a 48-foot cul-de-sac, 48-foot radius cul-de-sac instead of a 40-foot, which is the current county minimum radius. I want to say that the county is not unwilling to take on this responsibility. What we need is time. 3 months is not enough time to get the staff, to get the subdivision regulations updated, to get a stormwater ordinance updated, to get policies regarding buffering, regarding access management. These things take time. They take public outreach. They take public input prior to their implementation. And that's not to mention any kind of transition period in there. And so on behalf of the commission, I respectfully request that you consider as a planning commission laying this over for 1 year to give us time to plan and to get the appropriate ordinances and staff and processes in place to be able to accommodate this 35% of the city's applications increase.
Any
Well,
questions?
could you help us to understand what the process is for the county to get to the point where they can adopt all these items that need to be adopted? Is it just a matter of the county commissioners coming together to make these changes and adoptions of the ordinances, or is it bigger than that?
So we've begun rewriting some of our ordinances now. We've pulled them down and started looking at them. We thought there was a 6-month waiting period in the code. That was actually written out in the 2012, but with a couple of months to write it and get everybody together to make sure we're on the same page, and a month or two of outreach, and then a month of advertising that we have to do to properly adopt these things, I would think the earliest we'd be able to get them in place would be July or August of next year.
Matthew, wouldn't it be likely that the county will use the same subdivision regulations that we've been using in that area for some time now?
There will be certain elements of the city's subdivision regulations that we will adopt and try to use because they are best practices. There are some things that are impractical. Minimum lot sizes are very practical. Controlling the ratio and the shape, abnormally shaped lots, is probably going to be outside what we're going to try to do with our update of the subdivision regulations.
I have a couple questions.
Yes, ma'am.
So, but currently, you do have subdivision regulations for the county. They're just perhaps not as stringent as you think you might like in, what is now the planning jurisdiction.
Absolutely. Yes,
But-
we have subdivision regulations.
But the county wouldn't be without any regulations in any way. You would just, I guess, potentially have a gap depending on timing of adopting new regulations.
There would be a gap. That gap could significantly impact infrastructure, as there are no real drainage requirements in our subdivision regulations right now outside of the Big Creek Lake watershed. And so the people who are downstream from large developments might have an issue with the additional water that comes down that we wouldn't have the authority at that point to regulate.
Have you explored the possibility of I don't even know if it's legally possible, a moratorium on development while you get your regulations in order? Or is that something that you've had any preliminary discussions on?
The thought has been mentioned in a time where Mobile and the outlying areas are growing as fast as they are. I have found a lot of people who are adverse to the idea of a moratorium, even a 6-month moratorium, when there's already a desperate need for housing out in those portions of the county with all the new development.
I have a question.
And just to, also, you do currently have a county flood damage prevention ordinance?
The flood damage prevention ordinance generally applies to those federally designated flood hazard areas.
Okay. And then I guess just to double check, you mentioned kind of fire codes. I don't think those would be affected by this at all.
Okay.
Is that correct?
The city fire code, which is 2012 International Fire Code, stops at the city limits and has so for a number of years, and therefore there should be no impact on what the county enforces as their fire code, which my understanding is equal to what the state has now.
Okay. Thanks.
Go ahead, Nate.
You done? Is that it?
Most municipalities, most governmental entities afford the engineering.
I can't hear you, Nick.
Mike, you can hear me now?
No.
Most, there we go. Most governmental entities afford the engineering staff, certainly the county engineer, the city engineer, an awful lot of latitude in interpreting regulations, making them strengthen if they need be in various periods. Does Mobile County not afford that authority to the county engineer to be able to make those decisions that may sit in a little bit of a gray area?
The county, and the legal minds can correct me, as a Dillon state, has no authority that is not specifically written to it in the state code, which does not give the county engineer, as I understand it, a lot of latitude if it is not specifically designated as such. There will be a paradigm shift in the way we review subdivision applications, in the sense that under the code, the county engineer has to certify to the county commission that the plat meets all of the subdivision regulations prior to the county commission being able to approve it. Right now, the planning commission as a body can approve a subdivision application with conditions. Must meet the flood ordinance, must meet the stormwater. The county does not have that luxury. It has to, all of the legwork and all of the background has to be done to a level that the county engineer is comfortable certifying to the county commission that it meets all of our regulations at that point.
I guess in thinking about it a different way, if there was something, I guess the county engineer just would not just blatantly or openly approve something that might cause harm to a downstream property owner with regards to subdivision development or any type of developments.
I don't know that the county commission would have a choice in that.
Okay, but I mean, I guess
if it meets the subdivision regulations, the county engineer certifies to the county commission that it meets the subdivision regulations without any stormwater considerations taken into effect, then the state code says that the county commission shall approve. And there is a segment in our subdivision regulations that if the county engineer does not detail deficiencies to the applicant within a certain period of time, that it's automatically rolled forward approved, I'm sure it would need to go before the county commission due to the change in state law since the subdivision regulations have gone into place. But there are timing things set in place so that the county engineer can't withhold approval unnecessarily or arbitrarily.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. But I mean, if there was a situation where some development that was coming forward that just because the rules at hand said that it could be done, if it was known that that would cause an issue, he could say no and allow that to be taken up in another venue. I don't think most engineers or developers would take on developments that would potentially cause a downstream issue because they know they're going to end up in another venue to solve the matter if they do that. My point being is I think the county engineer and the staff, much like the city engineering and the staff, has that ability to say no. I mean, no is an acceptable answer sometimes. So I just wanted to.
I'm going to leave that to the brighter legal minds. I'm not sure that we're in agreement on that point.
Okay.
I think that the law is written to where they process through without a lot of regard for engineering judgment.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. On your changing of your subdivision regulations to adopt closer to what was being done in the planning jurisdiction, does it have to be advertised and have public hearings? I'm just trying to figure out the process that you'll go through.
So the process that we've outlined is a couple of months to actually get them rewritten, to get these elements incorporated. In the past, we have tried to take at least a month to reach out to the impacted parties, to the developers, to the citizens, to the Home Builders Association, to have meetings so they understand what we're trying to do before, and so they understand we're not just trying to arbitrarily pass something. They have to be advertised for at least 3 or 4 weeks prior to the commission's adoption, but we try to, and we hold a public hearing on those, but we try to go ahead and do our outreach before the advertisement and before the public hearing. The last time we made an attempt to modify the subdivision regulations, we received significant pushback from the parties outside in the county, Baykeeper among others, that were really concerned that we were trying to lower the standards.
Yeah.
We weren't, but
How long did that process take when you did make changes historically?
so historically we have advertised, had about 2 or 3 months, then advertised for a month, and then held the public hearing and adopted it.
Okay.
Prior to the 2012 legislation, there was then a 6-month period before they would go into effect.
Okay.
And so that was, all those changes took place prior to 2012. And so we haven't adopted any changes
I
since
see.
that legislation came
Okay.
through.
But these would be as soon as you went through your study period, your public access to what you were producing, and then a public hearing in front of the commissioners? Is that what you have to advertise for the
Yes,
3
ma'am.
weeks in the paper?
And the changes to the
Okay.
regulations.
But then you don't have that 6 months rest for having them to come to fruition. That's no longer on the books. They
As
would
I understand, that is-
automatically be adopted and come into place.
Yes, ma'am. As I understand it, there would no longer be a waiting period for them
Okay.
to take effect.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bartlett, paint us a picture of what it'll look like if we pass this resolution today. I mean, effective January 1st of next year. What is that going to look like for the county?
We're going to see, I think we're going to see a lot more of these smaller lots. Our smallest lot size is actually smaller than the city's right now. They can do 6,000 square feet instead of 7,200 as a minimum lot size. The detention requirements will go away for a lot of these subdivisions. We won't be able to require them, and so, good engineers will put it in. Engineers who are maybe not as thoughtful may not have the same level of detention facilities that are out there. And so the infrastructure may not be in place to handle these downstream waters, which may mean that the existing subdivisions are impacted by development upstream. We could potentially have stores going in, I'm not going to name any names, that aren't doing anything between them and the next door neighbor because they're not required to anymore, because there's no buffering in the subdivision regulations. The streets, I think we will see a lot more private road subdivisions. The county's private road subdivision standards are lower. As a planning commission, you have established that private road subdivisions should be built to the same standard as publicly maintained ones. When they come to the county, that will no longer be the case. Our subdivision regulations set out a lower private road standard, which means you will have more citizens that are on a lesser built road, and that somewhere down through time will be asking why their road is falling apart and nobody's taking care of it, which is, more pressure on the elected officials for decisions that were made by predecessors or by other bodies.
Would you have to go to Montgomery to get those more stringent restrictions placed on your process? Or do you just anticipate that that would never be the case? So by rolling back the PJ, that's what will be developed close to our limits and further out as well?
By rolling back the PJ without giving the county adequate time to get these new regulations and requirements in place, when the last time the city did a significant annexation in 2008, when they had the election, they adopted 2 or 3 areas, there was a significant rush of applications that came in to construct private road subdivisions to the lesser standard ahead of because they knew the planning commission jurisdiction was going to extend out and was going to require a higher standard of roadway and require more money from the development standard. And they were all getting in under the little moratorium we had until middle of February of 2009 to try to get these developments approved by the county commission and get them constructed prior to the planning commission adopting a jurisdiction out there.
Do you have the ability as a governmental body to take what we roll back and create an area that has different standards like it does today, only under your wings? In other words, whatever language you come up with, it would be identical to what would have been in place had this commission not rolled back the borders? Is that possible legislatively or process-wise?
I'll be honest, I'm not sure. I believe that's probably a question for the lawyers.
That would be.
Is
your lawyer present to answer that?
Anybody? Okay. No, ma'am. Unfortunately, they are not able to attend today.
That seems like that would make sense because it's already adopted out there, so people are very familiar, developers are, and it's just asking another body to be the set of eyes and the review board as opposed to this body.
That makes sense to me as well. It seems like y'all could adopt the existing way that we've governed that area, and then if you need to make tweaks for the county, that's a process later, but at least you have that in place within that 5 miles during this time period.
Need the lawyer.
I also want to, reiterate that we don't have the staff right now. 35% of your applications, and we're talking the personnel board, while I understand its purpose, it can take a significant amount of time to staff up for these kind of technically oriented positions, not to mention trying to get those things accounted for in our budget where we don't charge fees currently. And so we're talking about a significant staff increase and a significant staff cost increase we're going to potentially have a period of time where we don't have enough staff to adequately address these technical reviews.
Can you adopt a fee schedule, though? I just don't know what the county is allowed. I know it gets a lot of their, jurisdiction and stuff out of the State House for what they can do. Do you know if they do charge? They have the ability to charge for services?
The code actually allows us to collect fees, but it limits what those fees are to $25, I think, per application.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the city is $50 plus a certain amount per lot plus the mailing cost.
But you don't know if you could duplicate that as a county entity?
I can't say for certain that where it might conflict with the code that governs what we can.
Just one thing I wanted to add as far as the staffing. I mean, obviously, I run an engineering department, so I understand that. But for the city, we have exactly one person. When you take the planning and zoning components away of it, which would not be there, we have exactly one person that does it. So it's not, I don't think, a big of a leap of technical stuff as you might believe it to be, because of all those that come through now. George, if you would raise your hand, we have one person that does the technical piece. So it's not as big as I believe you might think that it is.
Okay.
And I was just going to add, Matt, because I know your concern is probably with the larger subdivisions, but like before us today, we have 4 applications that are in the county. 3 of those are 2-lot subdivisions, and one of them is a 3-lot subdivision. So I have to think you guys are set up to handle those. I think the ones you're more concerned about are the larger ones, but quite honestly, we may see one every 3rd meeting. I mean, I can name Eliza Jordan, Preserve, Labrador Run, and maybe one off Jeff Hamilton, 4 bigger subdivisions in the last 4 to 6 months. But we're not, we're not seeing the larger subdivisions come through here at every meeting. But I understand the first one you get is going to be, an issue to deal with. But I just think you can accommodate these smaller applications, can't you?
It's going to be an all or nothing kind of thing. We're not going to get a choice to accommodate the smaller ones and not have to accommodate the larger ones. I don't have a crystal ball, so I can't see what's coming down the road. I know that you guys had 3 different applications for the Redlands, and then a master plan on top of all that. So that's 4 different applications that we have to make sure before we can approve any of those that they meet all of the subdivision regulations. You had 3 phases of the preserve. We're on the 4th phase of Briar Grove. I know we had one Labrador Run, which was 3B. We just had the one that was down from the preserve that it took 2 or 3 meetings for everybody to kick around a little bit. We have Sierra Estates, which was the 2nd phase is sitting out there. We have Burlington, which the 2nd phase is still sitting out there. There are nearly 1,000 lots that I've been shown master plans for that accommodate some of those other large areas near Eliza Jordan where they're, and we have some large subdivisions out in the outreaches of the county too. Off Creel Road and some other areas, we have some subdivisions coming too. I understand that it's not that much of a review. I also wear the hat of more than one person who's at the city right now, because Marion's hat, I wear that one too. So I understand it's not one person handles it for the city. I handle multiple hats for the county.
Mr. Davis does as well.
Okay.
Well, and this is obviously a pretty big change to a policy that's been around for decades. I mean, it's going to take some major adjustments. So, it just, I guess my question is, what's the rush? I mean, is there a reason why we're trying to push it so quickly, or is there maybe that's a question for staff. Is there a reason for that, or do we have the luxury of time, or?
Well, we're trying to adhere to the time frame that has been outlined in the state law requirements, but as was communicated to county staff in our earlier conversation, I call it the back of the house administrative function that's tied to this effort, and we expressed a commitment to provide support for that in any way that we could.
Would it be possible, this is just sort of an idea, if we make this change and make it effective January 1, could there be some kind of partnership with city staff for a predetermined period of time to help out with the applications that are coming into the county, to give the county that time to transition and get up and running on its feet, to take 100% full responsibility for it?
Again, from our perspective, there are some day-to-day operational things that I think that we could provide assistance and support for, and we're happy to sit down to come up with a reasonable time frame that we think helps get them ready for that January 1st time period.
And then just for clarification with Mr. Bartlett again, I mean, this is a matter of all these issues that we're having with access management, connectivity, buffering, the major street plan, the cul-de-sac issue with fire, which there's no issue with there, but is this just a matter of the county commission making changes and adoptions and passing the resolution ordinances to address these issues?
That is correct. As I stated earlier, it is not that we do not want to take on this or that we're not willing to take this on. We're simply asking for more time to make accommodations. The state law actually sets out for us to get a little more time than y'all have given us. 115230, section B, or actually section E. Let's see, it's actually CE2, if you can imagine that. Section C, 2E says the municipal governing body and the municipal planning commission exercising the authority granted in this subsection may thereafter withdraw their exercise of jurisdiction over future subdivisions located outside the corporate limits of the municipality after not less than 6 months' notice to the county commission.
Okay. That makes sense.
Mr. Anderson, is that an accurate interpretation of that, or? Okay. Yes, please.
We're looking at section 11-52-30 of the Alabama Code. It's broken up into separate paragraphs. Paragraph A is the longest one. It talks about planning commission jurisdiction within the corporate limits and extending no more than 5 miles beyond the corporate limits. Paragraph B is the one that was added in 2015 or whenever it was, that says that the planning commission by resolution may reduce that extraterritorial jurisdiction by resolution adopted on or before October 1 to be effective January 1. Paragraph C is then broken up into multiple paragraphs. C1 talks about the county commission and the planning commission entering into joint agreements for how that extraterritorial jurisdiction will be handled, which is what was done years ago between the planning commission, the city, and the county commission. Then we get to paragraph 2. I call it the hostile takeover paragraph. And it says that if the planning commission and the city and the county commission cannot come to an agreement as to how to handle outside the city limits within the 5 miles, the city and the planning commission may override the county's enforcement of subdivision regs by doing the following. It's a hostile takeover. So the planning commission and the city could override what the county commission is trying to do. 1, adopt resolutions. 2, employ professional engineers, notify the county commission as to what the standards are going to be. 3, the county commission retains authority to require performance and maintenance bonds. 4, the county commission retains authority to execute on bonds to make necessary repairs. And then the one that Matthew talks about, the 5th one, paragraph E. If the municipal governing body and the planning commission override the county commission's jurisdiction and put into effect that hostile takeover, once that is done, then the planning commission cannot recede therefrom without giving 6 months' notice. That provision has nothing to do with what we're talking about here today. I hope I haven't confused you.
Clear as mud.
Yeah, very
good.
It sounds as though it applies only when the planning jurisdiction is growing, not being proposed to be shrunk.
Yes. Yeah, and that provision for 6 months notification and delay only applies in that situation where there's been the override.
Are we mandated to start January 1?
That's my reading of it. Yes, sir. What do you answer? That the statute says read it to you.
Yes.
The Municipal Planning Commission, by resolution properly adopted no later than the first day of October of any year, may provide that, effective on the first day of January, the jurisdiction would be reduced.
It says may.
May.
It doesn't have a.
It says you may adopt the resolution.
Right, but I
Once
mean
you do it, it's effective January 1. Okay. Once you elect to do it, it has to be done by October 1 to be effective January 1.
Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Rosler, do you mind reading that one more time?
Yeah.
I thought I heard you said they may do it January 1st.
Yeah, the may is about the.
May is what we're doing today, maybe passing the resolution. But once we pass a resolution, it has to be effective January 1. We have no wiggle room on that.
A municipal planning commission, by resolution properly adopted no later than the first day of October, may provide that, effective on the first day of January, the territorial jurisdiction can be reduced beyond the radius of 5 miles.
Do you see anything that would preclude some sort of real agreement between the city and the county that would to help the county until they can come up with the plan they need to, that would preclude us from doing that if we adopted it under that?
As Ms. Biko said, administrative support, that detail can be worked out.
Like a mutual aid like we did with the planning jurisdiction for police and fire, where we made the announcement and said it was moving back, but that we wouldn't abandon and would always be there when needed and would work with the agencies until...
Yeah, I don't want to talk for Ms. Biko, but...
That was, to me, because we had a bumpy start initially with that, and I was all in on rolling back because it meant better times. I was being very selfish, but listening to the commissioners, I understood their angst over it. So is there a way that even if January 1st came and they were still working on something or needed support, we would...
Yes, and so we would be more than willing and stand ready to provide support to them through that time period.
Here you go.
Yes.
Yeah. I would hope so.
But I want to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah. But we would like to emphasize a time limit, and we would present March being that cutoff time period.
March?
Yes.
Instead of the...
As you know that we're ramping up.
In other words, January 1 would come and we're supposed to be divorced, so to speak.
Right.
But there would be that also a little comfort zone to the March level.
Correct.
And then you could say it's...
Yes, as we're about to start a new happy marriage with a new set of ordinances that I'll be presenting to you very shortly. Yeah. So,
Mr. Barclay.
But that would be administrative staff support. If this resolution passes, then this commission's jurisdiction would end January 1.
Hearing them, in other words.
Right. Hearing them, deciding them, enforcing any regulations. This commission's jurisdiction would end. So what Ms. Biko's talking about is just the administrative
internal
staff support.
Yeah. Right. But that would not provide any help on the issues that they're worried about, the stormwater management and the access management and that sort of stuff.
Well,
unless they could they do some, I'm asking the city attorney a question I should be asking the county attorney. Is there some sort of mechanism by which they could maintain the existing ones that the city's got right now that they've been operating under for a limited length of time?
The regulations? The county would have to adopt them. Which is, and I'm going to let, if I say something wrong, I'm going to ask Ms. Pappas to interrupt me here. What I hear a lot coming from Mr. Barcliffe is that the county likes your subdivision regs.
Yeah, will they adopt them?
And they want to adopt them. We've analyzed it. We think that's a cut and paste job. They talk, Mr. Barcliffe talks about, not picking on him here, talked about stormwater and detention.
Yeah, flooding other people.
Well, as I understand it, in the sub-regs, there are requirements for stormwater detention that you often impose upon subdivisions as a requirement. Those regulations require a certification by an engineer that there's been compliance with the regs. The city does not go out and inspect. So if the county wants to continue with the same stormwater detention rules and regulations. All they got to do is cut and paste, adopt what you've already got in place, and it's status quo.
Yeah,
Am I right on that?
That's the answer.
Okay.
Matthew, could you respond to that?
Just the brain, because outside.
So there are a couple things that that I kind of want to respond to. We have two different issues that we're talking about. We're having the subdivision regulations issue and the staffing issue. And if you draw back your jurisdiction and you assist us still with the staffing, that handles the staffing issue. I do not think that cut and paste of the subdivision regulations is an appropriate way to approach this. Even as a body, city, you are currently rewriting your subdivision regulations, as I understand it, to try to modernize them, correct?
Yes, I would agree, but additionally, I would say that as we approach the rewrite of our subdivision regulations, they are more focused on what I would say a urban density that may not even be applicable for application within the jurisdiction. So we are making that shift.
So we wouldn't want to necessarily cut and paste because there are things that we don't want. There are things that we don't want to implement. The lot ratios are not practical out in the county. The general prohibition on flag lots, we have them all over the county that I know you guys have to provide a waiver for the flag lots. It's going to, there are things, yes, in the city subdivision regulations that, yes, we would love to adopt. A simple cut and paste job, I think, is a gross oversimplification of the process.
But it is just a matter of the county commission adopting, making changes as they see fit, and then adopting it, and then starting enforcement.
Yes.
So that should be able to be done in a fairly short period of time. It would have been helpful if our county commissioners had been here today to address some of these questions. But you've got 3 months, October, November, December, to cut and paste or adopt or change, and then you got day one, January 1st, to start implementing, which I can see how that would be a problem, as far as just getting ramped up with staffing. And if we can offer some help with the city staff for a very short period of time through March, maybe that would help the transition go smoother.
Thank you for the offer.
Does the county hire consultants to work with different disciplines so that they're not necessarily coming through the personnel board? Because I know that would take time.
That would be a decision of the county commission, and so.
But I imagine they have the authority to do so.
I would imagine they have the authority to employ consultants. Yes.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak for or against this? Any other comments from staff? If not, I'd like to close the public session of this topic and enter into deliberations. Are there any further discussion by commissioners? As an understanding that if this got delayed, it's not necessarily a year. In actuality, this would not start until 2020.
One more year.
Well, we would, I guess, adopt by October, but then it wouldn't start till January 2020. Okay, all right.
So our options are, and at this point in time, pass the resolution, not pass the resolution, or hold over to the next meeting.
Based on the conversations and discussions that were had today, does the commissioners even feel like a delay is going to change the issue? Is there a motion?
Move to adopt this resolution regarding the rollback of the planning jurisdiction.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposes?
Abstain.
Let the record show there is one abstention. Item passes. Thank you. We need to take a 5-minute recess for some business, and then we'll re-adjourn for the regular meeting.
They need more time. What?
Okay.
This was the business. Maybe he has to go to the rest. I think we should have held it up, and I needed to talk to the commissioners, just personally, ask them. What? Guess they figured we were gonna do it. You know, they probably. I don't know. It worries me for growth of our city to not have. It's how you strangle a city. You get all kinds of satellites around it. Yeah. No, it'll be a free fall. I hope that they can look at just the planning jurisdiction and just adopt most of what we've done, because it's closest to our borders. They don't have to go out rural with these kind of things, because there'll be pushback from big landowners out that way. They're pretty play hardball. Maybe they can make a zone or something. I don't know what I don't know what they have the authority. I want to sort of to get more documentation on that. So I think the flooding is the thing that concerns me, and no zoning out there.
That's where the rest of
How did Baldwin County get zoning? Because they're a county government, so how did they get the ability to zone the commission? They apply? They have to go to Montgomery to get it? Do they have to go to Montgomery to get it? They don't have a lot of enabling rights. Well, they could do it in sections. Oh, yeah, yeah. I won't know who I am. So what do you do in your spare time, Kim, when you don't have to be here? When are they supposed to give an update? When there an update time? Busy part. What about West Side? Is it even included? Or did they just leave that off the map too? I hope so. Because I put money in for planning for that. For this next, October budget. It's got the only special ed baseball field in the whole area. Who else has one? Buddy Ball?
Might have, could have.
Do they have an organized group that runs it?
No, and that's what's frustrating is because, we have the group that's out there, but we have a facility.
Yeah, so the people in the area need to know that they could get the keys to it and run with it. The Buddy Ball is a good program.
I know.
It's excellent. It's all ages. It's nice. It's nice. The parking lot, they said.
We included them in our focus group meetings in front of the Parks and Rec stuff.
Yeah, good.
And with that,
Yeah.
we actually have a really good representation of that. But yeah, so I think it's a good word of operation, just to understand where it's be like, hey, let's look at this part of the whole, see kind of what they're wanting, what's the whole,
Yeah. That's in Landfair, right? That's like, I mean, I can't believe the community hasn't adopted that. It's beautiful property. I've walked it.
Yeah, see, well, that's the other thing about the Parks and Rec. We need to have standards for you know, small people who want to take care of us.
Yeah.
You know, we need some standardization.
Yeah.
You know, because we don't want to make a.
I feel like that's how.
We have to make sure it remains a public.
Yeah, of course. But even so, I mean, there's enough people right there to make it public. It's like in a huge area. You got the apartments nearby. You got. Yes. I know, because they're afraid of the.
And you have the young families.
Yeah, like get a hand. Yeah. Yeah, of course, because they know it's a plus. Yeah, I would let the older people just learn to love that park.
Well, I mean, it helps that it's not like one big grand huge.
Yeah. No, and it's not a big site, but.
Well, it's kind of 28.
Yeah, no, it's nice.
You know, I mean, keeping.
Okay, we ready to go? Okay, that's what I do.
Yeah, but it's still, it's
Are we getting free landscaping advice?
a walking path, playground structure. It would be a plus
Judge
for
must
selling
have somewhere
homes.
to go.
And that's what the young families
Yeah,
know. Yes, and walkability. Absolutely.
Let's resume public hearing on the items on the agenda. We'll begin with the extensions. Item number 1, west terminus of Moses Way, extending to the east side of Rex Drive, Labrador Run, Phase 3. The request for a 1-year extension. Staff recommends approval. Is the applicant present? Not that they. Oh. And I'm assuming you're in agreement with that. Is there anyone here against it? To speak against it? Thank you. Item number 2, 8401 Howes Ferry Road. Request for a 1-year extension. Staff recommends approval. Applicant present. All right. Is there anyone here to speak against that? Thank you. Moving to our holdovers. Item number 3 was withdrawn.
Thank you.
Item number 4, McLeod Family Subdivision, 4300 McLeod Lane. Recommended for tentative approval. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with staff recommendations? Applicant is present and in agreement. Is there anyone else here to speak for this? Anyone here to speak against? Thank you. Moving to new subdivision applications. Downtowner Commercial Park Subdivision, re-subdivision of lots 1 and 3. Recommended for tentative approval. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with staff recommendations? Applicant is present and in agreement. Is there anyone else here to speak for this? Anyone here to speak against? Thank you. Item number 6, New Country Club Estate Subdivision, Unit 4, and resurvey of Lot 8. Recommended for tentative approval. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with staff recommendations? Applicant is present and in agreement. Is there anyone else here to speak for this? Anyone here to speak against? Thank you. Item number 7, Fred and Mildred Family Subdivision, 2 subdivision, re-subdivision of Lot 1. Recommended for tentative approval. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with staff recommendations? Applicant is present and in agreement. Is there anyone else here to speak for this? Anyone here to speak against? Thank you. Item number 8, Gonzales Estate Subdivision, 3075 Homer Tip Lane. Recommended for tentative approval. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with staff recommendations? Applicant is present and in agreement. Is there anyone else here to speak for? Anyone here to speak against? Item number 9, 3263 Zemlich Avenue, Zemlich subdivision. Recommended for tentative approval. Is the applicant present? Am I missing you? Is the applicant present? Is there anyone here to speak for this? Anyone here to speak against? Thank you. Item number 10, Harper Lane subdivision, 9125 and 9127 Dawes Lane North. Recommended for tentative approval. The applicant present. Are you in agreement with staff recommendations? Applicant is present and in agreement. Is there anyone here to speak? You oppose are you the applicant? You are the applicant. Okay, could you come to the mic, please? Could you state your name and address for the record, ma'am?
Linda Brown, 4728 Megan Court, Mobile.
Thank you. And you said you were opposed to one of the items?
For the portion of the property that they're wanting on Dawes Road on the property.
Item 1.
We lost a lot of the property when they came in and did the roundabout out there, and I don't want to lose any more of the property.
Okay.
Which one are we on?
Ms. Brown, are you talking about item 1 under your subdivision requirements? Revision of the site plan to illustrate dedication sufficient to provide 50 foot from the center line of Dawes Road?
That's it.
What are you requesting?
Well, we just don't want to give it up. I thought they were asking, wanted us to just give it to them. And I mean, like I say, this land was left to us, this was our inheritance from my mother. And when they did the roundabout, they took a large portion of the property. And we're to sell this property, and we keep losing more property, it's going to hurt me and my family.
Staff, could y'all provide some clarification for her on that, please?
It is essentially a standard comment. Dawes Road is a major street on the major street plan, and based on the plat submitted, there is not right-of-way 50 feet from the center line to the property. So typically, we request dedication to provide compliance along the portion that fronts Dawes Road. However, the commission can consider, in lieu of that, the setback that provides for that future expansion, so that way, if the additional improvements occur, the entity acquiring the property is purchasing land and not land and improvements.
You understand what they're saying?
Not quite.
Okay. It's more of a setback that you can't build anything on that little section there for 50 feet back from the center line of the road.
You would still own the property. However, with a setback, you could not build a building in that area.
And that setback would be how many feet from the future?
Make it hard to sell.
It would be, the future right-of-way would be 50 feet from the existing center line, and then from that point, it'd be another 25 feet. But that is from the center line of the road. Because road improvements do not always fall within the middle of the right-of-way, I cannot tell you it's going to be X feet from the pavement because I have no way of knowing for sure.
And that's only on the Dawes Road, not the Dawes Lane?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct. It's strictly on Dawes Road.
Do we have a pointer so to kind of show what, as far as setback? Is there, I mean, I know we don't have a ruler.
Well, and the other thing is, like I said previously, the actual road may not lie exactly in the center of the existing right-of-way, so I'm not able to tell her or the commission, you know, it's going to be X feet from this curb.
Our maps show that the property already comes into the road. That map does not, at least what I'm looking at. So was there already a setback? She said something about that there's been a setback or taking.
Okay, the plat submitted shows that the center line of Dawes Road to the property line is 37.5 feet. So you're looking at a dedication of an additional 12.5 feet.
Okay.
And then the 25-foot setback, which is standard in the subdivision regulations.
And it's still your property. I mean, but you just can't build any structures on it. Within that period, that little distance. Right.
They're not taking the land from you. It's just a certain zone.
Can build
You can't build in that
in the area.
within that area,
Okay.
but you can
An additional
build in the
12
rest.
and a half feet, basically.
Because it's commercial property, and I've got a potential buyer, so I don't know if this is going to hurt me, you know. Shouldn't?
It should.
Okay. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak for or against this application?
My name's Paul Beeson. I live at 9154A, which is downhill from this property. And I have no problem with the property, what they want to do, but my only question is, you know, and I guess I heard my answer this morning, but why is there not already something in place to control runoff water? Because the water, when they did that circle, the runoff water pours through my property, and anything additional creates more havoc, you know. This was talked about having retention ponds back when they did Champion Hills. I brought up about a retention pond there, and they did put one in, and they told me then they didn't have to. And that's been, what, 12 years ago? And now, you know, all these subdivisions folks are doing, developing, it just creates more runoff, more flooding, you know, on folks' property. Not that I got anything against what's going on. I'm just saying years and years and years go by and nothing's ever done to control these problems. So just want to make a comment.
Okay, sir. It's duly noted.
So this application is in the planning jurisdiction, so, which is what we were talking about earlier.
Is there anyone else here to speak for or against this application? Thank you. Item number 11, east side of Clear Creek Drive, Clear Creek subdivision, recommended for tentative approval. Applicant is present and in agreement with staff recommendations. Is there anyone else here to speak for this? Anyone here to speak against?
Sorry, y'all, took a long way around. My name is Bryn Mixon. I live at 2213 Clear Creek Drive, which is directly across the private drive where the land has been cleared. And I guess more than anything, I just kind of want to know what this means, what's going on. It looks like they want to divide it into 3 different lots. And I can't really see. It's not a very big lot. Thank you. Thank you. It's not a very big lot, and it's been partially cleared, and I'm not sure if it's finished being cleared, but we have a lot of runoff coming down into our yard, clay, and I don't know, I guess I'm just more concerned about what's going to happen. It's a private drive. That drive is not maintained by the city. We like it that way. It is divided off from Spyglass. There's a guardrail there to separate us so that we don't get any through traffic, and I guess I'm just concerned that in the future that it's going to get paved over and we're going to start having through traffic, and
Well, this current application is only to divide it into 3 lots, but there's no development associated with it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't know.
It's a subdivision application.
Yeah.
So there are 3 lots, so there, I mean, Clear Creek Drive is that not a county maintained road?
It's private.
So are these lots going to have frontage?
It's gravel. It's a gravel road. The city stops on the paved road.
How, can staff address how we got it approved when Clear Creek is not county maintained?
The site's actually located in the city, and Clear Creek Drive, based on what was submitted, it's not a city improved street, but it is a public, within a public right-of-way. That is the reason why the staff has recommended that no further re-subdivision of this property occur until Clear Creek Drive is improved along the frontage of the lots.
Okay. So
it looks like they're just going to put 3 lots in to build 3 houses on the way it looks, but we don't know that.
Mr. Hembry, if I may, as I said, the property is within the city limits of Mobile. It is zoned R1, single-family residential. As such, only 1 house could be on each lot.
What's that remainder stuff? Are we allowing a parcel that cannot get access anywhere? What is that?
The property bounded by the heavy line are 2 legal lots of record. However, the tax assessor will tax plat however you want them to configure. So the balance of that is still on that plat, but it's not part of this site or the existing legal lot of record.
Okay, so there's 3 lots now. They go back to the dock.
No, ma'am, hold on. There's 2 lots now. They're creating 3.
You got okay, I see that. Okay. And they're vacant, completely vacant.
Yes, ma'am.
So what would be permitted would be 3 homes.
One.
If they came in tomorrow, do they have to improve the street even for the homes?
Not based as recommended. And it's 1 home on each lot.
Right.
I don't know if that helps you or hurts you.
Well, my concern is the small, it's not a through street. It's a very small street, and I just can't see 3 houses being across a street of this very small gravel road. It would, I think, be a whole lot of traffic.
Looks like these lots will be larger than the ones on Spyglass, based on just the pictures of the drawings.
It is a through street, though.
It's barricaded off from Spyglass. You cannot get through it.
Oh.
They pulled the barricade down to come through and clear and then put it back up, because we called the city to find out why the barricade was removed.
So there's a barricade where
the entrance to Spyglass is. We're on a dead end. Our house is the last one on the dead end. You're
on Clear Creek.
I am directly across the gravel road from where they've cleared for these 3 lots.
You say this is a gravel road, not a
is.
paved road?
It's a gravel road, and we have to take our garbage up to the neighbor's house for it to get picked up by the city.
Trucks won't come. But it's right off of University Avenue.
Yes, where Morgenthau comes off of Howells Ferry.
Yep. Yes, sir.
I guess concerning the access there, the fire code requires in the city limits of Mobile, any structure brought in or developed or built on property in the city limits of Mobile shall have an approved fire department access road, which is equal to what you would consider city standards. So if they build anything on those lots by the fire code, they'd have to improve that road to be able to access it.
Which would make it a through street.
Who does that burden fall on? The person who builds the first house, the person who subdivides it, the city?
Well, unfortunately, the people who develop after the institution of the fire code, Mr. Atchison, you've fallen under some of that with the fire hydrants. You know, if you develop and there's not a hydrant within the area, that developer has to put it in. So, yeah, it falls on whomever is constructing the property at the time to meet the fire code.
So the requirement we'd put on there is the road has to be improved prior to, as part of the subdivision requirements to meet fire code.
It sounds like when they go to get a building permit and it goes to the fire department, they're going to ask them to improve the road.
Yep.
Unfortunately, and I think Mr. Mayle confirmed this, for their building permit, since it's residential for a single-family home, the fire department will not review for the permit.
Only commercial.
That's correct.
I would not, but Todd McClune with the building department would, and his building code parallels the fire code on access.
How did the houses, you predate the homes, I don't know about your actually being in there, but this Spyglass and anything on this University Avenue, these homes were back there before all that development took place on this gravel road? Is it pretty much?
So they just started the clearing in May.
No, I meant, you said you're there now.
Yes.
Okay, this Clear Creek, Drive.
Correct.
That is gravel, so
yes,
your homes predate the Spyglass improvements?
Yes, my house was built in 1978, I believe.
That's why it's there. Okay.
What we could, the commission may want to consider a holdover. Staff can work with the fire department as well as with city engineering and the building department and see what the requirements would be between the IRC, the residential code, and the fire code, and possible improvements. The one thing I do want to emphasize, though, with this application, they are increasing the number of lots they have now. But what they have now is they do have 2 legal lots of record, which would allow them to come in and get permits for 2 lots, but not for 3.
Is this a family subdivision?
No, ma'am.
To your knowledge?
No, ma'am.
That's why we say 5 lots could go into a family division?
That's for private street standards. This is a public right-of-way.
But it's not to standard.
It's not to standard, but then again, even with the private street standards, construction's required.
And would it be staff's intention to recommend the connection to this Cypress or Spyglass Drive there?
The existing recommendation does not call for the construction. However, based on the additional input from both the public and the commission here at the meeting, we could gather additional information to present to the commission at their September 20th meeting.
Right. Because there's a stub out there, obviously, and we've come across this before. My suspicion is that the intention is that that would connect at some point.
Yes, sir, that's correct. There is when Spyglass Drive was built, the stub to the south was constructed.
Okay. Well, we've just had some developers or some neighborhoods not wanting to make those. Yes.
Right.
So I won't be here, but I recommend trying to make that connection.
Okay, thank you.
So basically, it's going to get connected?
It's going to be probably held over to the next meeting.
That's the whole thing that I don't want. So I guess I have no say or control over that. They did come in and put a fire hydrant in our front yard. I will tell you that for full disclosure. So I guess that's it. I guess I just came to find out what was going on, and I don't want them to make it a through street.
Well, it's not changing zonings. That's not before this.
Okay.
Commission.
Yeah. I know. It's just for the
Dividing
3 lots.
the land.
Correct.
So, basically right now they can build 2 houses. If this passes, they can build 3 houses.
Okay.
That's the change.
It's going to be really tight. We're going to be very close. So,
Sorry.
I have a related question to fire on this one. Since Clear Creek Drive is barricaded at the end, does it present a fire, will it present a fire issue with no turnaround or anything down there?
City Council recently has done away with the portion of Appendix D that required dual access to any number of houses. Therefore, it's not violating the fire code by being barricaded. We do have access from the other end that we could use.
Okay.
And I would like to add that the fire department access provisions of the fire code apply both commercially and residential.
okay, thanks, Mr.
Thank you.
Gant, Ms. Rich, Mr. Hembry.
Is the applicant here? Would they like to respond to any of this?
I think he left.
The applicant left.
Okay.
The applicant left.
That might have been helpful. Thanks, Joel.
Thank you.
Item number 12, 3961 Lauren Dean Road, Lauren Dean Landing Subdivision. Recommended for tentative approval. Is the applicant present? Are you in agreement with staff recommendations? Applicant is present and in agreement with staff recommendations. Is there anyone else here to speak for this? Anyone here to speak against? Thank you. New sidewalk waiver applications. Item number 13, 3726 Halls Mill Road, Precision Door. This application is recommended for denial.
My name is Patrick Garstecki, the agent with Coles Murphy Glover, and we just wanted to point out that before the PUD and subdivision was all applied for and everything, the 3730, the lot to the west, was also adjoined with the PUD, and so it's a PUD modification. And with that PUD, there was an existing sidewalk waiver in place, approved, and that was due to the roadside ditch on Halls Mill Road. And this new lot and subdivision has the roadside ditch as well. And so if this application is denied, well, let me back up. We thought this would also be appropriate to be under the existing PUD and keep that sidewalk waiver that was in place. Now, if this is denied, what you'll have is a sidewalk on Halls Mill Road that won't be connected to anything to the west because that has an existing approved sidewalk waiver. And then on Varner Drive, which is a dead-end street, less than 1/10 of a mile long, there will be a sidewalk as well going nowhere. And then the intersection, across the intersection, there's no sidewalk there. So you basically have a sidewalk on 3 sides, not going anywhere.
There's an initial PUD that included the building to, is it the southwest? You're saying?
Yes,
and
correct.
We approved, when was that?
Which is
recent? And we approved the waiver at that point?
No, the 2 buildings here were in a PUD together years ago. Then, within the past 4 months, the PUD was revised, keeping these 2 buildings and then expanding for parking over in this area. The sidewalk waiver is granted 10 years or so ago, remains in place for this, but then you had this newly developed lot or newly developed area that would require either construction of a sidewalk or a waiver by the commission.
So the sidewalk will be down Halls Mill and Varner Drive?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I just don't see adding a sidewalk to this industrial area. I mean, we've had some examples recently that the area was industrial, but it abutted up, it was close to residential. This seems to be all heavy industrial use.
Well, I would point out, I mean, I think in the staff report, it had mentioned that, is this one where it's across the street of where the soccer complex is going to be?
That's correct.
Okay, and then I would also point out that the city's, invested, capital funding to go ahead and asphalt that Lamar Creek trail there. So that actually might be a really neat connector between the soccer complex and the trail that we've established and are continuing to expand.
Ms. Andrews, I might just add for the record, because my comments from traffic engineering didn't make it into the site or to the staff report, but my understanding of the soccer complex improvements is the widening on Halls Mill Road, and it does also include sidewalk along Halls Mill Road on the south side to Lee's Lane connecting to the sidewalk that's on the west side of the intersection.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Thank you, sir. Anyone else here to speak for or against this? Thank you. New plan unit development applications, item number 14, 3450 Gerby Road, Addison Woods subdivision. Recommended for tentative approval. Is the applicant present? You're in agreement with staff recommendations. Applicant is present and in agreement. Is there anyone else here to speak for this? Anyone here to speak against?
Can I ask some questions of the applicant? They'll come forward. Thank you. Thanks.
Bobby McBride, Row Engineering.
Thank you. The residents in the area were very interested in this development, and I'm going to assume, although I'd like to hear it from the applicant, that these are still single-family residential buildings. It says buildings, but are they homes?
They are.
Okay. And the earlier subdivision, plat, included two buildings. One was they were both going to be assisted living facilities. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand those are removed, and
that's correct.
And you have a clubhouse instead?
A clubhouse with a separate parking for that facility. Okay. The owner has determined that over time that assisted living facility is not really conducive to the area there. They find that more and more people retiring are more interested in the single family detached that way. Mm-hmm. This development is almost identical to the Brookside on Cottage Hill Road that Mr. Pesnell developed. And if you're familiar with that, you know he goes the extra mile. He goes all out on landscaping and concrete streets and drives, and really tries to create a very comfortable and nice environment for people.
What was the name of the developer for the other one?
Mr. Pesnell, O.A. Pesnell. He also
Brookside. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
The other thing is that this was, I thought, a private drive. Is it still considered a private drive?
Yes, ma'am. Okay. It will be on a single lot.
Because I'm just going to be asked a lot of questions, so I want to be knowledgeable. So I appreciate that. And then the lots 1 and 2 do not have individual curb cuts still.
They will not. We will adhere to the staff approval from the prior PUD application.
Because it was originally 28, I think, single residential, like patio type.
Yes, yes, okay. Basically. They're detached. They have their own parking. Just basically single family residences on one piece of property.
Is there a timeline for development?
We're working on it now, trying to. That's a difficult piece of property. If you've noticed, we got land disturbing approval.
Cleared it nicely, though.
Right, he did. He's done a nice job, and we're working on the plans right now, trying to get them submitted to city engineering. So.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 15, 3262 Old Carline Street, Jack's Place subdivision. Ms. Latham is recused. Item is recommended for tentative approval. Is the applicant present? Are in agreement with staff recommendations?
Tom Clark, Clark Gear Latham Engineers for the applicant, 3901 Spring Hill Avenue. I'd just like to ask a clarification. I understand the staff is recommending that we dedicate a portion of the southern part of the property to obtain 25 foot from the center line of Old Carline Street, which I don't believe exists right now. I think we're a little short on that. But they're also recommending we'd be denied a curb cut, a driveway to Old Carline Street. I understand the road is a bit narrow and substandard at this time, but it may at some point in the future get improved, and I'd like to not put it on the subdivision plat that we be denied that curb cut so we could do that at a later date, and concede now that we would not pursue that at this time.
So just have the option to add the curb cut later?
Yes, just don't put it on the subdivision plat, but
Once it's improved to city standard?
Sure. Just keep that option open for my client. I think that's item 5 on the recommendations. Just revise that to allow that on the subdivision plat.
And there's a list of uses in the B3 which you are offering to restrict?
Yes, ma'am.
As part of the condition of the rezoning?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
That's all you have? Thank you. Any questions by commissioners? Anyone else here to speak for this? Anyone here to speak against? Thank you. That closes public deliberation. And we'll begin with our deliberation session, beginning with item number 1, 1-year extension of the west terminus of Moses Way, Labrador Run, Phase 3. Recommended for a 1-year extension be approved. I'll make that motion.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded for a 1-year extension. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Extension is granted. Item number 2, 8401 Howes Ferry Road, recommended for 1-year extension. I'll make the motion.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Extension granted. Item number 3 was withdrawn. Item number 4, 4300 McLeod Lane, McLeod Family Division Subdivision, recommended for tentative approval. Is there a motion?
Move, subject to staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposes? Item passes. New subdivision applications. 1087 Downtowner Boulevard, Downtowner Commercial Park, recommended for tentative approval. Is there a motion?
Move to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Item number 6, New Country Club Estate Subdivision, 50 Barnes Boulevard, recommended for tentative approval.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Item number 7, Fred and Mildred Family Division, north side of River Road, recommended for tentative approval.
Move to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Item number 8, 3075 Homer Tip Lane, Casales Estate Subdivision, recommended for tentative approval. Is there a motion?
Move to move to approve based on staff recommendation.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Excuse me. I'm sorry, go ahead and ask for opposed.
Item passes.
I just wanted to go on the record that there was some opposition to it that was submitted to us. It's at our desk. There was a letter of opposition submitted that was at our desk. I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Item number 9, 3263 Zemlich Avenue, Zemlich's subdivision, recommended for tentative approval. Is there a motion?
Move to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. Item number 10, 9125 and 27 Dawes Lane North, Harper Lane subdivision, recommended for tentative approval.
Move to approve based on staff recommendation. Let's change item 1 to if we say a 50-foot setback for her.
It'll be a setback, 25-foot setback from the future right-of-way line of the planned major street.
Okay. Can we use that wording? That's my motion.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposes? Item passes. Item number 11, east side of Clear Creek Drive, Clear Creek subdivision, was recommended for tentative approval.
I move that we hold this one over to the September the 20th meeting. Is that the date?
Second.
Properly moved and seconded for holdover till September 20th. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item will be held over till September 20th meeting. Item number 12, 3961 Laurendine Road, Laurendine Landing subdivision, recommended for approval.
Move we approve, subject to staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. New sidewalk waiver applications. Item number 13, 3726 Halls Mill Road.
Move to deny the waiver.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded to deny the waiver for the sidewalk. Any discussion? All in favor of denial?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Item passes. Thank you. Item number, new plan unit development applications. Item number 14, 3450 Gerby Road, Addison Wood subdivision, recommended for approval.
Move to approve the PUD based on the findings of facts A, B, C, D, E, and F, and staff recommendations.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes. New group applications, 3262 Old Carline Street. Ms. Latham is recused. Subdivision and zoning, both are recommended for approval, so we'll take as one.
I'll move to approve based on staff recommendations, editing number 5 under subdivision to read, to allow curb cut to Old Carline Street once street meets city standards.
Was there a question as well about the item number 1 that the applicant had?
It was my understanding, I can't recall, is he still here? Was he opposed to the dedication?
Okay.
So to
1 is
answer
okay.
your question, number 1 was okay on the subdivision, but number 6 on the, yes, on the subdivision, adding the verbiage until such time as Old Carline Street is improved to city standards.
So 5 or 6?
placement of the note on the final plat that the lot is denied direct access to Old Car Line is number 6.
It also affects note
and
5
number
and
5.
9 as well. But it would be similar language for all 3 notes.
Yeah.
So that's your motion.
Okay, so edit 5, 6, and 9.
Yes, because that would lump in traffic engineering.
I second his motion.
Properly moved and seconded that the application be approved with edits to items 5, 6, and 9 with proper verbiage. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposes? Item passes. That closes public deliberation. Under other business, there's clarification of conditions 1356 Repo Road A and 1365. Thank you.
No, we disappeared too much.
She took all of them, I'm sorry.
What's the email here?
Thank you. Right, and we're going from 4 lots to 3, so we're having to shift
Is this
around.
in the package? I didn't see it.
Gotcha.
Oh, I remember this one real well. Is staff in agreement with this revision?
Yes, sir. What has occurred, if you'll look on the second page, you have a condition number 5 was the placement of the note on the plat, restricting curb cuts for the various lots. And then if you flip over, your first detailed site plan is what they submitted to the commission, and it was for 4 lots. Also, if you notice the northwest corner across Airport Boulevard, there's a little hatched area to the west that's kind of triangular that wasn't included. So if you turn the page to the last page, this is what they're proposing now. They're including that triangular shaped piece of property. That piece of property was actually all under the same ownership when it was submitted. They just inadvertently omitted it. We checked the notices. The inclusion of that triangular shaped property would not have altered the notification requirement. Everyone was notified. Now they've actually reduced the lots to 3 lots, and so that would affect the curb cut note on the commission's letter of decision. However, the curb cuts are actually less as proposed. So we would like the clarification to allow Lot 1, which is on your last page. It's the triangular shaped piece at the northeast corner. Lot 1, limited actually to 2 curb cuts to Airport Boulevard and 2 curb cuts to Repole Road. One of the curb cuts didn't show up in pink. But that is 2 curb cuts to Airport and 2 curb cuts to Repole. Lot 2 is limited to 1 curb cut to Airport, 2 curb cuts to Repole, and 1 curb cut to Hunters Ridge Drive North. And then Lot 3 is limited to the 1 curb cut to Repole Road. All of them, again, with the size, design, and location to be approved by county engineering and conform with AASHTO standards.
Make the motion based on your comments.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Item passes.
Thank you.
before everybody jumps up, since it's my last meeting, I wanted to say a couple things, if that's all right. I guess first of all, I want to thank staff. I know how hard you guys work, and I know it's a thankless job, and I appreciate it. I know the rest of the commission appreciates it, and in my time on the commission, we've had some very difficult applications and processes and issues that we've had to deal with, so I appreciate your support in that effort. Also want to thank my fellow commissioners. I didn't know what I was going to get into when I got on this commission, but I honestly can say that the atmosphere and it's been a very collegial atmosphere, and I feel like that the commissioners that I've had the opportunity to work with, you guys have been open to sometimes dissenting opinions from this end of the table, and I really appreciate that. Obviously, in our current cultural climate, that's a unique thing to have happen. So I really appreciate my time here. I appreciate everyone's support from the staff side, and I look forward to obviously the new ordinances coming through, and I know that you guys will do a good job with those. So yeah, I'm not leaving. I'm still in Mobile, but I will definitely miss every other Thursday or with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your service.
And Thomas, we will be co-opting advocates for this process, so don't. I know where you live, and I know what your number is.
And thank you, Keena, as well.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody's patience. As you know, I have perhaps rambled at times, but I assure you always with the best intent. It's been great kind of getting Map for Mobile going, getting it implemented, and I really look forward to when we can really get those regulations adopted so that we can kind of make, some of these ideas that we've gleaned from our citizens in terms of higher design standards into actual regulatory documents.
Thank you.
And I look forward to bringing your brain back into this process.
I think I'm busy that day.
Every time we strike a findings of fact, we'll think about you.
That's whoa. It's a legacy,
Whoa, that's important words.
Take care, have a good one. Look, and you're going to have to come and give us progress on your baby.